I want to welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to the Bayyinah Friends webinar. Again, my name is Brother Kwesi. Mr. Franz is not with us today. He had some very important engagements to tend to, so I'll be filling in and hosting. Today's special guest, we have Joëlle Dussek. Did I pronounce that right, sister?
Joëlle Dussek.
Joëlle Dussek.
Yes.
So today's guest is Joëlle Dussek. Today is July 30, excuse me. Today is Thursday, August 6th. Okay, we'll edit that out. Thank you. I'm gonna turn it over to Mother Bello.
Thank you very much, Kwesi, and thank you to all of you present. It is always a pleasure to meet with you in the name of all of our ancestors, all those who've gone before us, all those who fought for freedom before us and left us the roads and the principles. We officially open this session of Bayyinah and Friends. Welcome to everyone. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for being on time. Thank you for your participation. As you know, we always start with this poem about freedom that our ancestor Amunhotep, Ethiopian philosopher, left for us. So we will, without further ado, we'll go right into the reading of our poem. Joëlle, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
We have it right there. Okay, so that means you and I, Joëlle, are gonna be reading.
Yes.
Okay, and so you start.
Our first mistake was that we thought of freedom as a place rather than a continuation of a struggle.
Tyranny never sleeps.
Our second mistake was that we thought of freedom as a goal rather than as a launching pad from which to reach our goals.
Without purpose, freedom hardly matters.
Our third mistake was that we thought that freedom would make us free. That, however, is license, not freedom at all.
Freedom is being shackled to identity, purpose, and direction, and being in constant pursuit. So, Joëlle, before we go into who is Joëlle or anything, tell us how you feel about this poem. What does it say to you?
I mean, this poem, first, respect to the wisdom in which this poem was birthed in. We have to kind of think what type of mental, emotional, and spiritual space a person has to be able to understand at this level the multi-dimensions of freedom. What, for me, how it sits is there's an idea, there's a branding that is served to us, and then there's the reality, there's the actuality. And this poem, when it comes to freedom, it's really serving the actuality of freedom, not the branded idea, not what keeps us happy at the moment, so to say.
Thank you. Me, what always strikes me is the very title, Freedom. He doesn't say, I'm gonna tell you about freedom. He says, let's question what freedom is. Let us make it a continuous questioning so we can be sure whatever we're into right now, we're not left the road to freedom. Freedom is still with us. So he's showing us some of the mistakes we've made in the past, taking freedom for a place, thinking freedom made us free. That's probably the biggest joke. I want to be free. I don't want, nobody could tell me nothing. I'm going to do what I want to do. That is not freedom. Sorry. Very far away from freedom. Freedom is being shackled to identity. If you don't know who you are, how could you be free?
That is very real.
So, in order to be free, we first have to do the job of knowing who we are. If we have no clue, it's like children being raised by parents who have very rigid ideas. My first child has to be a doctor. My second child must be a lawyer. My third child must be, and my daughter has to be a dancer. Well, that's fine, but did you look at them? Do you know who they are? And so very often, as parents, we fail to pay attention to the children. Very young, the children tell us who they are because they know. They have body intelligence. They work with that. If you have 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds around you, look at them play. Look, whoever is forever saying, I want to be the doctor. No, I'm the nurse. I'm the doctor. I want to be the teacher. I want to be the, whatever. They're already telling you who they are. So when we see that this daughter or son always want to be a doctor, then this is a child that you need to buy syringes and everything that works with doctors for as toys. Don't give him guns. Give the child who he is, and that way you're going to reinforce their identity, which is already present, and they are quite aware of it. Very often we derail our children in the way that we raise them. So, Joëlle Dussek, our first question to our guest is always, sorry, no, I have to do a job before I do that. I keep forgetting about my job. Oops. Did I step out? Okay, I found myself. All right, my job, as assigned by Fondation Félicité. As assigned by Fondation Félicité, I have to tell you where to touch, how to get in touch with us. What we do is generally the Fondation's essential mission is to work and provide the tools for building identity to our people. Our primary tool is history, artistry that we use, but in the larger sense, we don't limit ourselves to what is in people's books or people's documents. When we meet people that are 110, 120, 130, and they know and they share, we do collect that information and we do use it. So to keep in touch with Fondation Félicité, where's my paper? All right. Okay, oh, thank you. Fondation Marie-Claire Heureuse Félicité Bonheur Dessalines is the full name. Of course, we had to get a short name because some checks won't even, you can't write all of this. But we did not want to shorten the name of a woman who knew who she was. So her name is Marie-Claire Heureuse Félicité Bonheur Dessalines. And one of these days, we'll go into the meaning of each one of those words. Anyway, we can be reached on Instagram, Fondation Félicité, official Bayyinah Bello, which is coming soon. We're working hard. It's coming. If you want to contact us by phone, 509-2940-0869. Our website is fondationfelicite.com. And if you want to contribute and help us do the work, you can donate via pourfondationfelicite@gmail.com with PayPal. My job is done for now, so we can go and be with Joëlle. So Joëlle, what is your most pleasant childhood memory?
I'm grateful I have many. But there's a memory specifically of being in New Orleans. So I grew up between New York and New Orleans, but being in New Orleans at a Mardi Gras and just walking the street with my friends and the energy, just the energy of, even though you could see the people, you knew there was more people. You knew there was more energy, there was more spirit, there was more ancestors and love, and a time where you just wanted to feel, it almost felt like a big hug, this beautiful embrace. And you know, when you're young, you're sensitive enough to know, yeah, let's ride this, let's have fun, let's get that embrace. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that feeling and that time with friends in such a magical place.
That's wonderful. And that's great. And that's very rich to have a memory that takes the whole town into consideration, that brings the whole town into your arms in a certain way. Oh, that is very, very healthy. Thank you very much for sharing that. You know, that's one of the hardest questions I've noticed over the years, that over the time that we've been doing this, that so many people, when I ask them this question, what is your most pleasant memory? They go into something sad. They go into something that hurts. Many people comes with something that hurts. And that, I don't know what it means, but I know that this is something that we have to be careful about. When the question is something pleasant, we have to do our best to find something that is pleasant. I'm trying to reach my paper here and it's, okay, I think I got it. All right. So, Joëlle, so you were raised in New Orleans?
Yes, yes. My mother moved us when I was young, and so I lovingly say I was kind of raised between sort of the idea of like two crazy cities, one very, very fast and one very, very slow. So it's only until I went to college I learned how to sort of navigate the middle. And also it was until I got to college I actually experienced sort of a real America, because both cities are not truly quote unquote American. New York has so many cultures from around the world that it is so, New York City predominantly is non-American in essence. And then New Orleans is so, for this new world, quote unquote, it's really an acquired city by the US, we should say. And so for so many reasons, it has always operated in a way, that kept an older sense of culture. To this day, I'll have friends visit me and they're from all different parts of Africa. And like one of my friends said, I think 2 years ago when we were in New Orleans together, she said, I know I'm in New Orleans, but I feel like I'm home. Like she felt like she had went back home to her country. And so it was just one of those moments where that energy is still there. And even after Katrina, it's still there. It's just been a little more, you know, diluted.
Yes. Okay. All right. What kind of teenager you were?
Well, my mother was a very good Haitian, strict mother.
That's
so
right. Where we are.
Keep them in line. No wildness. But to your point earlier when you said about paying attention to your child, since she raised me mostly as a single mother, what was important was for her to really synchronize with me. She found a way to always pay attention to what got me sort of illuminated, right? And so I really credit her for listening, because she saw that I was dancing and singing a lot. And so she's like, oh, well, let's make sure that you're in sort of a Montessori artistic based school, right? So I will never forget just that being such a part of my teenage experience of like making sure that I was moving my body and I was aware of sound and I was expressing myself, even if it was just whether singing in choir or singing in a play, or you know what I mean, being in theater. So I'm very grateful for her listening and paying attention. And of course there's peer pressure. You know, I still went to the hard Catholic school where it was like, you know, you get in trouble for just not having a name tag right. And she was like, but that was the best education. But other than that, yeah, that was my teenage years. A lot of art, a lot of fun, because I was in a fun place. You know, I can always say I was in New Orleans. So yeah.
That's great to think of the city as a fun place. That's fabulous. How would you describe the woman that you are today? What kind of life structure?
Definitely the woman I have become today, and even saying that, right, there's a part of me that I still hold in my youngness, in my youth, but I recognize being the first born in America to my mother's generation, I'm always leading, right? So in my womanness now, I'm realizing, oh, I'm an elder, even in the state, right? I am an ancestor, even in the present. And so how I'm walking, how I'm learning, how I'm listening, how I'm talking and receiving people is now become so much more of recognizing who I am as an elder already.
Wonderful. Joëlle, what is the meaning of flowing in the light?
Oh, that is, it's so funny you asked that question, because I was literally thinking of that this morning. For me, flow in the light seems so natural, but similar to how we have to pay respect to our ancestor with the poem at the beginning of this session, how do we get to a place of understanding? In my experience, flow is the natural thing to me. I like to be in synchronicity and harmony. And with light, I'm recognizing that light is even in darkness if you are bringing it there, if you're pulling it out, right? So it is our higher good to recognize that we are light, that there is light, there's many variations of light around us. How are we flowing? How are we going against? And particularly for Flow in the Light as a name, it's a representation to encourage people to just sort of, as we say, no, rock with it, roll with it, because when you're in more synchronization, you're going to hit more opportunity, understand yourself, as you talked about earlier, really get to know, who am I, right? And there's an aspect to flow that is really encouraging and exhorting people to be more in awareness of the feminine. So much of our world is, obviously masculine dominant, but not, I don't feel like masculine is necessarily negative, but there is just there's a toxicity that's come in conjunction with rigidness and just like very stark comparisons. And I feel like when you're flowing, you're in much more feminine energy. You're much more, and feminine meaning that you're birthing, you're creating, you're allowing understanding to happen so that you can create another thing.
So then a man could also be feminine.
Yeah, a man can,
feminine energy.
Right. And then and for me with my studies is recognizing that we all hold aspects of the ebbs and flows of masculine and feminine, depending on what motion, what situation we're in. And in particular, I feel that like the earth that we're on, the universe that we are in is actually, I do believe it is more feminine energy than it is a masculine energy. And I think that that also needs to be sort of recognized so that men, particularly if they're in a masculine form on this earth, they don't feel so like, oh, I can't be a nurturer. No, yes, you can. You can. You know, that's a part of everything that you're in. You look at the plants, that's how they talk, that's how they work. You can encapsulate that. And I think our ancestors understood that much, much better than we do now.
Yes, indeed. In fact, as you spoke, I think of two of my friends, male friends, Georges Brunet and Kepler Hyacinthe. Those two men, I sent them happy Mother's Day cards every year. Because absolutely, I have always seen these two men so attentive to their children, so caring about their children, that I felt these are two men that have really developed their, their feminine side, the nurturing side. And absolutely, this is, so I'm very proud of those two of, I love all my friends, but those two for this particular thing, this particular element in them, I find that it's particularly, it's very vivid. All right, now Joëlle, we're gonna skip through a few years ahead. How do you envision your life? Your life, your world, 25 years from now.
That's powerful. Well, first, I plan on being here.
That's the number one element.
I plan on being here. And what I love about that question is when I was 25, actually, I was working a corporate job. I was doing the thing everyone said, you went to college, you have to work, And I was looking around and I said, this doesn't fit. This doesn't work. And I figured out a way to go within myself. And I said, Joëlle, if you can imagine yourself, I think at the time I said 65, right? So if you can imagine what life is at 65, what does the 65-year-old version of Joëlle want to look back on? And I did this very beautiful meditation. No one had taught me, but I did it. And all I saw was particularly women and children, helping, serving, particularly Black women and children, and being sure that we are fortified. We know who we are. We are much more rooted, grounded, supported. And like that, my whole world changed. My whole world changed. I left the job. I saw everything much more clearer. It was like the compass had figured out where the north was. And that was it. And so till this day, that compass is still pulling me in that direction.
Fabulous. So 25 years from now?
25 years from now, Flow and Delight will definitely be a force of a counseling center. the media that I will be producing, the stories I will be helping to tell will be explicitly to help reawaken and remember or recall those of us who have the fight, those of us who want to not only exist, but to be at our highest good, be more in alignment with how we were initially created to be. And I see an oasis even where there's desert. I see creating an oasis even where there's desert.
Bravo. Absolutely. And I'll be with you, eh? I'll be with you.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Now let's look at the professional woman, the student in the field of somatic. Do I say right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about what is somatic. I know you're doing a master's degree in somatic. And I was wondering, is it related to psychology?
Yes. So the sense of somatic, the root word soma in somatic, S-O-M-A, is Greek for mind, body, spirit. So sort of like the holy trinity of the human, of us. And so the somatic psychology aspect is working with science, working with Western psychology as well as Eastern psychology to understand this sort of, I call the body that we're in sort of like a spaceship, you know? It's way more intelligent than we give it credit for. And it's particularly working with our nervous systems. So the central nervous system, and then even more so the peripheral nervous system. How I'm particularly looking at working within this field is not necessarily only being a therapist, but even more of a teacher. How I got into the interest of somatic psychology, it kind of winds, but one of the things I started noticing with my previous career as producing, talent management, all this stuff in film and TV, particularly with talent management, when I would see the genius of artists, obviously I would also see their shadow, right? And I would see their trauma that they're working through and how they're working with it. So it made me just much more curious because I would be consoling and I would be there with them. And I started noticing patterns. And so it just got me to question. You talk about questioning a lot. It's so important to keep questioning because then you're gonna get the answers. And so it brought me down a road of understanding empaths and then in particular, realizing how much misattuned information was out there explicitly to Black and brown and indigenous bodies. And that's when I was like, stop. I got to get in this field. I got to jump in because someone has to help wrangle and readjust or tune these conversations. There was particularly a book by a psychiatrist in UCLA, and because of my talent manager background, I contacted her. It's a fabulous book in general on empaths. However, she would do wording or she would do phrases like, well, empaths can't exist in urban areas. And I was like, why can't empaths exist? Because we know who the population is in urban areas. And so I'm like, I see empaths all day, every day, right? But it's also the political, the socioeconomic, they're misattuned, right? And so it started making me look at the misattunement, particularly with Black people. One of the things that I make sure to talk about when I'm doing presentations is, if we look at what is called jazz, the book actually is Essential Tools for Empaths by Judith Orloff. Again, that's Judith Orloff, and the book is Essential Tools for Empaths. And what I noticed in particular was something like what we call jazz. everyone's a jazz fanatic. All the intellects are now, oh, I listen to jazz, and you know, and it's like, yeah, but where did jazz start? How did it begin? Congo Square, New Orleans. At least in this culture, in this setting, in this US of A. But what did it start off intellectualized? No, it started off with Africans who were put through who knows what type of torture. And because at that moment in time, the colonizer then were Spaniards, and then you have the French, and they were, you know, a little bit more relaxed. So they gave them a few hours off on Sunday to congregate, because the US didn't do that, but those colonizers allowed a little congregation. And so they congregate at Congo Square. And when they congregate, they're not just like laying out, they're trying to call the ancestors. They don't speak each other's language. They don't barely speak the colonizers' language, but they speak the language of the body. They speak the language of the actual system that's moving already. And they start creating sounds, and they improvise, and they scat, and then we're making the music, and we're going, and we're rolling, and this is the sound. And this is what now we're like, oh, this is so intellectualized. It's like, no, that's somatic, baby. That's somatic. That was how they were freeing themselves to stay in their body, to stay connected to their higher purpose, calling, living, calling down all the ancestors, gods. Do you see what I'm saying? And so, but the misattunement is, oh, they're so talented. The misattunement is they're gyrating, and they're demonic, and they're sexual. That's somatic psychology. We've mastered that before you made an actual title for it. So, do you see it? So that's why I had to get in there. I'm like, no. What we're not gonna do, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna do that. That's not what we're gonna do. Especially because if you look at records, particularly in places like Brazil, oh my goodness. The Portuguese were like the most brute. Let's be very clear. They were very brutal. And they have this written document that pretty much says that they don't expect their cargo, essentially their chattel, to survive many years. So that's why they pushed them so hard, because they wanted to get as much as they could out of these people. And they didn't expect their cargo to really last for now, right? Brazil on this side of the hemisphere is the largest population of Black and brown bodies. The Portuguese had no intention for them to last as long. How did they do it? So this is why I'm infiltrating. I'm infiltrating that field, because I'm like, what you're not gonna do is what you're not gonna do is obviously colonize an idea, make it new when it's not new. And what you're not gonna do is mislabel and keep mislabeling, keep misattuning to who we are and what we've done and where we've been and how we've already mastered so much of this. And so, yeah, so that's where I'm at right now, particularly with somatic psychology, infiltrating.
I am so proud of you, Joëlle.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe this is the right you. Joëlle is one of the members of the assistant that when we invited you to write, she wrote to me and said she would like to be part of Bayyinah Friends, to come on Bayyinah Friends. And after speaking to her, I felt, yes, absolutely. And I'm very, very happy and very proud to see, I like this, you infiltrating, I love it. So this girl is about marooning. See, we didn't do it that way. We were bullying things. When we were our age, we bullied our way through. And I'm sure we would have gotten much further had we marooned our way through. So keep it up. Yes. Very good. Very good. All right. So Have you ever been interested in writing? I know you've mentioned you dance, you sing as a young girl, but how about today? What is dancing and singing and, you know, the art? What part of them is still with you?
Well, I can't get dancing out of my blood if I tried. So I'm very grateful that's still with me. But as far as the writing, yes. The funny thing is, sometimes there's tools that we're given that we have such a sort of that love-hate relationship with, right? When I was particularly in undergrad, I was handpicked by an organization called Damascus Road, that they were at the time the only anti-racism group recognized by the US government. And they wanted to test out their protocol and their curriculum on college students. So they handpicked 5 students, and I was the only Black person. And that curriculum was fabulous. It was super intense. It broke open sort of how I could see sort of the systems of oppression. But I was 17. You know, your prefrontal cortex isn't barely on at 17. I'm still in my limbic emotional, what, you know? But the thing about children is, or youth, they get it fast. It's just they don't have the agency, they don't have the capital to know what to do. And, but I learned my capital was writing, and I learned my capital was my voice. And I was so angry, oh my gosh, you know, 17, and someone shows you sort of that matrix of racism and institutional oppression, and you're like, ah! You know, so I was enraged. And the tool for writing and speaking became my lifeline. And at the time, it was late 90s, early 2000s. So the culture in the US, particularly for the youth, was slam poetry. And I was a slam poet for a little bit. And I used that fuel, I used that fire, and I, you know, like a dragon, slay it. I had to get it out. I had to get the minds going. I had to speak up. I had to relieve myself. And now as an adult, it's one of those relationships where it's like, ooh, I don't feel that angry anymore. And I can rationalize so much more now. I'm not just in my emotional body particularly, but I still have the skill and I still have the tool, and I'm being asked to come back in, right? The spirit is saying, I need your hand. I need you to write again. I need you to speak again. I need you to come out of the shadow, which is what was your invitation? Come out of the shadow. I was like, oh goodness,
Right.
Okay, it's time. So there's some, especially now with school, I'm utilizing the discipline of writing, particularly in academic form, to get what I have to say out in one realm, and then eventually to move it into the realm of writing for the people, specifically for the people.
Wonderful, wonderful. What is your favorite music style?
It's too much. It's like, if it's African, if it's Black, I'm like, give it to me, you know? But I will say the music of my heart always comes back down to like the sort of couple dancing, whether it's kizombe or compa, you know, like just there's something about that fusion of the masculine and feminine energy and that sound, that there's this moving of the hips and the circular motion that is so native to Black bodies that I just love it. Whenever I hear it, my body's like, yes, give it to me. So now it's like, I mean, I'm on the West Coast, so I'm in California, so there's not a lot of Caribbean people out here, so I'm missing a lot of my good, you know, you're hearing soca music or something, but that is truly the music of my heart and my spirit. But I will say, when it comes to the musicians that are coming out. Even today, I was so excited. One of my favorite jazz musicians and trumpeters, Christian Scott Atunde, just released a new single with Title. And what I love is that we still have young folks who are still embodying the ancient sounds that our ancestors made. So, and I don't know if you know Christian Scott Atunde. He is from New Orleans. He is Black and Native American. So he's the Black Indians from New Orleans. He's a chief, and he has award-winning albums. But what I love is that the trumpet, which was always like this, you can see the ancestral knowledge came to him very young. He says, why the sound doesn't flow this way? It's too angled. We have to make the sound move the way the wind moves. And he redirected and changed the whole form of the trumpet so that it has this beautiful flow, and the sound is just like amazing. And it's musicians like that when you hear them play, you just kind of get pulled back a minimum of like 600 years, you're like, whoa. So I love all of that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Can you share with us what you consider to be the essence of life?
I think I'm still learning that. There's a taste though. It's like when you've tasted it, you're like, there it is. I like that. That's what it is. And for me, there is something, the essence of life, the taste of it is in community, in true community. There's something about connecting to people in a way that's just not like, oh, hey, I'm on the phone with you, or I'm texting, or it's a soul touch. If I took this armor of a body off, and the true essence of who I am, and the true essence of who you are, that we call Bayyinah, that we call Joëlle, it's when we touch and you're like, there it is. There it is. That to me. And then it's like, there it is. And then we take it higher. We take it into an essence that our ancestors and which the cosmos, and you see what I'm saying? Like the spirit energy is ready to touch us as well. That to me is like when you hit that moment with folks, it's a beautiful overwhelm of like, oh, now I feel alive. I truly feel alive, So that to me is I think it's all encapsulated in what we call love, right? We call it love, but I think even the word love has become branded and it's very egocentric. But I think that's the true essence of it is there.
Mm-hmm. And what is the most important lesson that you've learned so far?
I think it's letting go. There's so much. When the matriarch of my family passed away a few months ago, my body was tight. It was very tight. And we went to this acupuncturist, Haitian acupuncturist in New York, which is amazing. And he's very on point, very aware of the body, obviously tons of degrees. But when he started to put the needles in me, I appreciated that my body, even before he put the needle in, my body sort of caved in, even before it touched it. And he said, you're the one who holds everything. I've been waiting for you. And I was like, whoa. It was one of those things where I'm still learning to let go. Like, it's okay, let it go. Don't be afraid of losing something or forgetting someone or forgetting yourself in some regard. I think there's an aspect of, for me, letting go can also be a part of love and not a part of rejection. And I think that was a huge, and that still is a bit of a learning curve for me to be like, oh, when you let go, it's not that you're rejecting or you're telling someone you don't want anything to do with them, or you don't, it's still part of the trusting the process and the cycle of love.
Great. Very good. Now, I hope everyone is noticing youth and wisdom. We sometimes think you have to have gray hair and, you know, before you could. No, it's not about the age. It's about how you deal with knowledge and how you apply knowledge to your daily life. That's what brings you to wisdom. What would be your ideal fulfilled lifestyle? What do you want into your life? You God.
My ideal lifestyle, it definitely would be one of the word nourishment, like full nourishment comes into place, where mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, communally, there's nourishment coming in and going out. Always this flow coming in and going out. What does that physically look like? Particularly for me, I need warm weather. I love sun. I need my warm weather. I need my sun. I'm like a plant. I need my sun. I need my water. You know, it is truly around more melanated folks. That's just, there's beauty there that I feel that the more we understand what our eyes are looking at, is why you have to be very careful what your eyes are seeing. It's what you're taking in, right? And so for me, I find beauty in dark skin. So that's a part of that nourishment, an abundance of it, you know? And I see just a home where there's love and there's life, but a home that the community comes to, the home that the community knows they can come to, the home that they're gonna get nourished on multiple levels. That to me is an ideal lifestyle where I'm not worried about the alarm clock or the, you know, it's rolling, it's flowing, it's in synchronicity.
Fabulous. What is IT to you?
You hit me with the big one. Oh man. I gotta sit with that. That's one that causes emotion. Beautiful, just beautiful emotion. Haiti is life. It's life. I think it's a gift I feel my ancestors were they were so good to give me, right? I can say, I'm a child of Haiti, truly. I am a child of warriors. I'm a child of good grace. I'm a child of intellect. On that, not just in the books, intellect in ways that connect to the stars, intellect in ways that connect to the ground, the earth. I'm a force, you know, because I'm coming from Haiti. And I know what that means. That's the difference. There's tons of Haitians walking around that's like, it's like a brand, you know? I tell people all the time, you buy a bottle of wine and you buy the branded bottle of wine. But knowing wine is important. Knowing what makes a Merlot, the essence of that is more important than the name of the brand, right? And I am grateful that I understand the essence of what Haiti is, the taste of it, the true energy of it, right? And when I say energy, I want to be clear. I look at us as people similarly to how I look at plants. Even how we, as the human genome has been the most connected to the pea plant. So we have a strong relationship to the idea of plants. And just as we know that some plants have certain, even when we talk about alcohol, one of the words we call alcohol is spirits, right? So just as a plant is encapsulating the spirit that we then turn into vodka or wine or whatever, we too are holding this essence. And I think when it comes to the Haitian culture, understanding how rich that spirit is and that essence is, and connecting to that is more important than just the name or the brand of it. And I think for me, just knowing that and being very familiarized with that, it's so young. It's such a gift now as an adult, because it also helps me navigate so many more cultures than people think. I've been able to go to Ethiopia and Egypt, and it's my Haitianness that's actually able to decipher the code that's happening there, the sounds, the rhythm, the cultural aspects. It's very interesting.
Yes, ma'am. How much interest do you have about artistry? Have you read She Rose of the Haitian Revolution?
Yes.
If yes, who is your favorite among the ladies? Or do you have one?
I can't say I have one. No. I take that. I do. I mean, first I was impressed with the Shiros. I was impressed with everyone, because there's names I didn't know. There's truly names I just didn't know. But for me, after reading that book, and mind you, a friend of mine who's Haitian and lives in New Orleans was the one who told me to get the book. He's like, you gotta get these books. Da, 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 da. So I said, okay, I bought them. And I think I needed to be reconnected with Ana Canona. I needed to understand what was going on that I just didn't process before. And there was, I think when I started reading more in the book, and particularly trying to get more understanding around, one, there's a part of Haiti with the indigenous side that I know is there, and I physically know it's there even in my family, but I just kind of was like, oh, we're all Haitian. We're all Haitian. Put it in the pot. But when I was ignited with that name, I started doing more research, and that's when I said, whoa, we had sort of the queen of all the queens. And I particularly was talking about a Puerto Rican friend of mine, or Borican, and I was like, oh, you don't realize that she was in Haiti. And that bloodline and that spirit and that energy is also a force moving in conjunction with all the other ethnicities coming from particularly the west of Africa. And that one really sat with me for a while. That one sat with me for a very long time after going through the book.
I see. So, She Rose has touched you, has connected you to the female power, the female forces.
Yes. And what I will say is, you don't want to be like, it's about time, but it's time. I think, I appreciate all of our stories, but I always, even as a kid, I always questioned, well, where are the women? Where are the You know, you'd read, you know, if you went to Catholic school or wherever, you read and God told the men and the man, and you're like, well, where are the women? Right? And so even as I'm learning all the stories, I always question, where are the women? Right? We weren't idle. Let's be real. We're not idle now. So there's, you know, if you do the math, you're like, we had to have been there somewhere. And so particularly with the Shiro's book, I was fulfilled. And also I received, my mother bought me also, oh my goodness, I'm gonna forget their name, but the bag that has all the Shiro names on it.
Oh, okay, yes, the sister in Brooklyn did that.
Yes, and I'm like, it's time. It's because for me, Haitian women in particularly, we are not only the backbone, we're the glue, we're the mind, we're doing so much. And yeah, it's time for those names to be out and said and recognized and held.
So we're gonna sing, I'm coming out. I want the world to know.
That's right. I'm every woman, all those songs. We sing it
Right.
all.
Excellent.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much, Joëlle.
Yes, thank you. Oh, can you see me? Hello? Yes.
I see you. It has been an absolute pleasure to exchange with you. And I am sure our audience is very eager to start exchanging with you.
Yes.
I will make a short reminder. Let us be mindful of what we have talked about and what the person is about, what the subjects this person is interested in. So, and let's zero the questions in such a way that the person is very comfortable in sharing with you. Let's not have the questions go in every direction. We're gonna do much more discipline today. We have to put in more discipline, self-control, discipline, and we will be enriched even more. There is one topic I didn't touch at all, and it's coming now. So before we go on, when I heard you, when you were talking about somatic, nerves and reactions and spirit, I said, you know, but where is voodoo in all this? Isn't this voodoo she's talking about?
With voodoo, it's all there. It's all there. I was thinking of this morning. I have yet to see any ritual. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I have yet to see any ritual happen without movement. Right? Because if you can do voodoo without movement, then you could just sit and everything's happening. We just think it, right? And that's definitely what the Western culture promotes, you know, oh, just think it only. No, it has to get into the body. The body is what keeps the score. The body remembers things, right? It's you play the drums and the 2-year-old starts to, not even, the barely 2-year-old they start to move. Who taught them that? They're fresh. They just showed up. They're just here. Where'd they learn this rhythm? Right? But that's because when we look at somatic, well, there's two things. You have the central nervous system, which is the brain into the spine. And then you have the peripheral nervous system, which is throughout the whole body. One of these nervous systems is online the second you're born until the day you die. And the other has to cultivate and work with you and myelinate and prune and all these things. When you're born, your brain is not fully online. It's practically placid, it's smooth. eventually it becomes rigid. It has its ridges and its grooves, and it's getting information, and you know, you become 14, oh, we don't need the information anymore, let me get rid of that, and we don't need this, and it starts to prune. But the minute you're born, your sensory in your body is on. It understands fight, it understands flight, it understands response and fawning, and it understands, you know, even when a baby is getting too overwhelmed, they go within, right? They don't want to look at you. They know that they know enough to turn. This is already online. And so it's moments like that, particularly when I mentioned the creation of jazz, that is voodoo, right? That is, we're using this body to move this, to get the energy out, to redirect the trauma, especially the trauma, reset the nervous system, shake off what is ailing us or bothering us, or we need to use it to excite and conjure and move the vibration, the frequency, the spirituality among us and among us. So that's pretty much why it's so important to infiltrate these spaces, because they'll have you just, you know, they'll say, oh, little Timmy had a traumatic experience. And so to get little Timmy back into his body and to calm and to breathe and to reset, we worked on some breathing exercises, and we started, you know, playing a tambourine and put some rhythm in there, because rhythm tends to be really good for the nervous system. And you're like, well, no, well, duh, we knew that, right? And so even when it comes into ritual, we can't go into ritual just by, I'm gonna just think this out. It's gonna happen. We have to move. We have to reset the body. We have to be in that vibrational frequency. So somatics is all in that.
Thank you very, very much. Without any further ado, I turn it back to you, General Kwesi, to get the audience involved.
Thank you, Mama Bello. This was awesome. Okay, we have the first question from Francine Leonard. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, Bayyinah, this is really hard for me. Can you hear me? Yeah, this is really hard for me because this is a field that I'm practicing in, and I have many, many questions running through my mind right now. Yeah, so I'll try and do my best. I'll try and behave.
Good.
I am okay. So I have this burning question about the biodynamic energy that will rise in a session, because I'm a somatic practitioner, that will rise in a session. And what I've been noticing is, and I learn a lot from my own sessions, by the way, even if they're bad. But looking at my body, I was trained to look at like kind of like a wound that opens up. It's dark. It's, you know, don't to go in there, you know, like work around it or you know, like come at it from the edge and try to reduce it coming in. But after I listened to a talk by Edward Bruce Bynum on Genesis, and he talked about us being enfolded in light, and that the universe is mostly made up of dark matter, and looking at the Kemetic kingdom, the goddess Nut, the primordial goddess that's that they related to as being the goddess that asked for humans to be born. I found earlier pictures of her that her body is black and with the stars in it, and then later you see her body is blue with stars in it. So she was originally referred to as like the goddess of night, and then later on it's like this. So she's what some like Asian people would say, sky goddess, you know. So where I'm bringing this in is I'm starting to look at that dark hole as actually maybe it's the mother, like the womb, you know, and not this wound. See, they say wound, and but what if it's a womb, you know, which has a larger context than a wound? Could you speak to that? It's not, that wasn't really a question, but I guess it's sort of like, but did what I just said make sense?
Is the question to me? I'm sorry, I'm missing it.
Yes, because I noticed I started getting my clients to speak their positiveness about themselves, what they felt embodied about themselves that was coming up. And I started asking them to speak into that dark space, speak those words of affirmation of what they are truly feeling, their goodness, their innate goodness. And I noticed that there was great potency there, that the darkness didn't have to be avoided. It didn't have to be looked at as a wound.
Right.
So,
I think
can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think I understand what your question is. I mean, wherever, we won't understand light without shadow. I also don't like I also try not to use the word dark too much, right? Because we are dark bodies and I don't consider myself, I don't consider myself, right? But understanding that there's shadow, and anything that is a living thing, a real thing, it's actually, you can see it cast a shadow, right? So when you're in session with people and the shadow shows up, that means there's something real. That's definitely saying, oh, there's a real thing here. Let's sit with that. That's the biggest thing with somatic, is how can we sit with that? How do you as the client, so to say, keeping it with the client, how do we address, just as we're walking down the street and we see our shadow, we've come into a place, unlike when we were 2, our shadow doesn't necessarily scare us, right? Most of the time you see your shadow, you don't give it much of a thought.
Yes.
So when we're in session and we're talking with people and the shadow comes in, we have to help them assess, are you in a space where you're 2 and the shadow seems like it's a real thing, or is the shadow just an extension, a part of a light being cast onto an actual situation, actual being? And that's usually how I'm holding in session. But when it comes to actually like goddess energy, spirituality, all of that, that to me is dark matter. That's different than shadow, if that makes sense.
Well, I actually wasn't talking about shadow. I mean, I'm talking about black, you know, like what white people have labeled a wound. I'm re-questioning that as to maybe that is the mother showing up, you know, to be present for that, to provide potency, nurturance for child, to sustenance, to heal and come past this labeling of wound. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That maybe this is the mother. And because they labeled it as just wound, you see, wound, womb, W-O-M-B.
Right.
That maybe this is a womb that is showing up, not a wound is what happened, but because of all the labeling and the assimilation, maybe we are primed to see just wound, not womb. You see what I'm saying?
Right. And I think that has a lot to do with the actuality of a more toxic masculine perspective, especially when it comes to psychology. We have to remember that psychology is Western psychology. Let's be very clear. Western psychology is rooted in particularly white male egocentric aspect. That's how it's,
etc.
Right. So it's going to naturally be, the opposition is always going to be then, of course, the darkest and the most feminine. So I hear what you're saying. And I think, I mean, there are studies, particularly there's a woman named Air Joan, and Air, I think spelled E-A-H-R, Joan. She has compiled the first Dark Mother Encyclopedia, specifically recognizing who we were as beings, recognizing this dark mother and worshiping her, recognizing her being such a part of culture, and across the globe. So I would recommend taking that, that sort of understanding that you're already coming into, because I hear what you're saying, and I do believe that you're onto something. But then seeing and conferring with people like Air Joan, who's already done so much of that work, because I do see how that can be coming up in session, particularly in the rigidness of Western psychology.
Yeah, because it's sort of like this
Let's give someone else a chance.
Okay, all right, okay. I hope you can leave your information so I can get in contact with you.
Yes.
I'd like to continue this conversation if it's possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that question, Francine. That was a really deep question. Our next person is Luchu Lumanco Nanto. I hope I didn't botch your name up too much. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Good evening, everyone. Well, it's evening. I'm in South Africa, Cape Town, South Africa. So it's evening time.
South Africa.
Thank you, ma'am. Mine is mainly a comment more than a question. Firstly, to Sister Joëlle, I want to say thank you. It's really been an informative session. And to Ma'am Bayyinah Bello, I just want to say thank you very much. I think you are more than just to belong to just Haiti. I think you belong to the whole Black body. I think you belong to the whole world, to all Africans, to all Black people. You have no clue how much I love and I respect your work. I recently wrote a book. It's still yet to be published. I make mention of you in the book, and there's quite a number of things that I wrote in the book that are inspired by your work. There is an email address that you posted earlier on. I will send you a PDF version of the book. I just want to say again, it's an honor to be in this space with you. You are someone I love and I respect so much. And I think, again, you belong to every Black person who exists in this world. It's been great being here. The energy has been great. We've not been in session face to face, but just being here and being around you guys, the energy that I've been getting has been a very great one. And I just want to say thank you for bringing this together. It really has been worthwhile.
Thank you very, very much, brother. And all our best to South Africa. I know the country is going through very hard times, difficult situations, but we know we are strong and we will be victorious. So, do you know the poem, Declaration of a Zulu?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, wonderful. So we recite it regularly in Fondation Félicité.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
To victory.
To victory.
Thank you. Our next hand is raised is Rose Murtha Fortuna. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi.
How are you, Rose?
Hello, Bayyinah.
How are you? We're fine. We're fine. How are you?
I'm so happy to see you. Yes, I'm fine. I'm studying for my exams. I start the 17th of August. So, but I'm happy that I can catch this one, and I'm happy to see you. And this is really a topic that I'm really like, that inspires me a lot. So I want to ask a question. I wanted to ask to you too, but I'm sorry, I forgot your name. The guest speaker, I always forget her name.
Joëlle.
Joëlle. Hi, Joëlle. Nice to meet you. And I'm very amazed by your work. And I think it's very necessary. My question is, so I was invited by somebody I know to do a healing session specifically around the fallen victims of police violence in the United States. So I live in Belgium, so it's a predominantly like white country, like very white. And I was invited to help her lead like a healing session around the fallen victims of of police violence. So I asked my ancestors for help, and they gave me some guidelines. But because I'm very new to this, like I feel like very much a baby. Like I watch all your videos on Hulu, and I read the book you recommended. But like it's also because I'm adopted, is something that is like sometimes something that I have to do a lot by myself. So like I just trust on the guidance of like spirit and ancestor, but sometimes I'm afraid that I'd like misinterpret or misunderstand the message that I have from spirits. Like for example, like for the healing sessions, I was in the house with this person, and at a certain point, like I thought that she was like gone, and I thought like my ancestor told me that she went to the store, but actually, but she didn't went to the store. She was just in a room, and I just didn't hear her. And then after reflecting upon, I understood like that was just like my own anxiety, like my abandonment issues that came from being adopted, that like was in my head, and it was not ancestral spirit. But then also when we were at the healing sessions, then what my ancestors prescribed was like to make like a healing circle. So first like we pour liberation, and we honor our ancestors, we pour liberation for the violent victims, and then they said like to make a healing circle with all of us, and then have somebody like in the middle, and to just let them explain and express how they feel by hearing the news that another female victim has died of police violence, and how it makes them feel that we are subjugated to that violence. And it was actually very powerful. Like a lot of people who are not really used to being in tune with our emotions, because like Black women, we are not really allowed to like feel and to be crying, to be sad, especially when it's for racism. So there was crying and there was tears. So there was a lot of release happening there. But the thing I want to say is like sometimes I don't know how to interpret this.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Let's all take a breath. This is what somatics is about. You see how you're spiraling? Breathe.
Okay, yeah.
Breathe. Breathe.
Yes, so
just breathe. Just breathe. Let's sit with that. This is, you can't hear yourself. Let's breathe. One of your biggest resources is to feel the differentiation between an in-breath and an out-breath. This is how you're going to be able to differentiate and decipher positive thought, affirming thought, flowing thought that's giving you life, and a thought that's diminishing.
Yeah.
An energy that's diminishing. So I'm just slowing you down. This is part of what the work is. Even as a practitioner, I gotta slow you down because I need you in your body. I don't need you because I can't follow you, right? And I'm hearing the trauma of not having enough community to help and support you, to guide you. I'm hearing that. We're with you. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for coming. Keep coming. Keep showing up. And when you breathe and you take it step by step, that's how you're going to get the answers. That's how you're going to listen and to be able to decipher. One of the biggest things we don't talk about in the Black community is the word discernment. Because that's essentially what you're asking. You're asking, how do I discern what is really for me and what isn't for me? What is for my best good and what isn't for my best good? That's a powerful question. I'm glad you're even asking that question. But you won't be able to hear or decipher or discern if you don't slow down. That breath is important. You won't be able to know. I have clients that can't really feel their body. How do you know your hand's over fire if you can't feel your body? Same thing in the spiritual realm. How do you know you're dealing with something that's not really for you if you're not with you? Does that make sense? So I just want to slow you down. We can't count starting at 13. We got to count starting at 0. We got to get you back down to 0. Okay? So now let's take a breath and let's see if you can actually say the specific question you want to ask. Give me 2 breaths before you ask the question.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you for that. Yes. Well, so when we were doing the ritual, my ancestors whispered like, okay, there were 2 Black women, and they still told me to remove the 2 Black women that were standing there. And I think I was just in my rational mind, and I said like, I cannot possibly send away 2 Black women when we are doing a healing session for Black women. But then at the end of the ritual, they actually caused a lot of havoc. They were not part of the healing session. They were just like watching, and they caused a fight with people that were standing there as well. And that, yeah, it just was me. Yeah, it was a lot. And that is what I'm asking actually, but you already gave an answer. But I wonder if there are certain practices that I can do to like, yeah, make that stronger, I guess, to trust when, to trust it actually, to trust and to know when my ancestors are talking and when I don't have to rationalize things that are not really possible to rationalize. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So again, 2 nervous systems. And this is the thing. When we look at what is now being studied with somatic psychology, we have to remember that we are not a part of this earth. We are in full, the way we've been created is to be in harmony with this earth. So if we're looking at a gazelle, let's say an example of a gazelle, right? And there's a hunter, and the arrow is going and the gazelle gets away, right? We, just like the gazelle, have to do a sequence of things. When there is something that shakes us up or sort of makes us nervous, there's a sequence of steps that we really have to do in this essence of somatic. This is what they're not teaching. So the gazelle finds someplace safe. Normally it's encaved, or it's something that feels embracing. And one of the most key things that any animal really does, particularly mammals, is they shake. They shake and they reassess the nervous system. Not this nervous system, not the brain. This nervous system, because this is the nervous system that's really gonna save your life, okay? I wanna be very clear on that, not just to you, but to everyone. This is the nervous system that has helped our ancestors minimum 600 years to still be here this day, as in you, okay? And so, but the culture we're in says, no, this is the one. Use this at all times. And this is the one that's tripping us up. Not to say don't use your brain at all, but there's a sequence of the brain serves the body. The central nervous system through the brain serves the peripheral nervous system. This is also why people get caught in anxiety disorders. You got to breathe into a cup because the brain doesn't understand, are we in fight? Are we in flight? Are we in freeze? Are we in fawn? Right? And the brain says, no, we're okay. But the body's like, nah, something's off. And it's that gut. When we say my gut told me something, that's your original nervous system. The true beginning of who you are, that lower body. And so your gut was saying, your gut in connection with the ancestors is saying, something ain't right about those women. And your spirit knew that. But you did what, and I don't want to just be like white man, but you did the very Europeanized thing, the very non-African thing, and you went straight to the brain. When this serves the peripheral, this serves the nervous system, this serves your gut. And so you did that, you overrode. And that's the thing that humans do. We're so intellectual, we override so much of what the real body that's been there to help us since the second we came out of our mother's womb to be here, survive, and actually have life. And so we go with this, and then we go back and say, I knew it. Something told me I should have. And this is why you have to get back into your body. You have to breathe. You have to slow down. I've only met you for what, 5 minutes, and I can already be like, ooh. right? But I also understand you're in a culture that maybe everything is think. You're smart. You are smart. You can think. But how are you in your body? How do you feel your nervousness? Right? You can, because we all have sat on the train or the plane or the bus, and we can feel someone looking at us. And we turn off. Why do you do that? If that's not real, why do you do that? Don't ever let them tell you that's not real, because you see it every day. You experience it every day. You just don't trust it. Right? And you're only going to learn to trust it when you slow down and you start getting into your breath and back into your true nervous system and your body.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Yes. So continue, Rose, to breathe. Make it a thing to breathe every morning, every night, so you can balance things out in the body. That's a very expensive. I should send you the bill and, collect. Very expensive science session that went down here. Because we could all see the difference in your face as you do the breathing, and we saw what happened, how you calm yourself down. So please continue. Okay? Thank you. Lacey, can we have the next?
That was wonderful. I think we can all benefit from a nice breathing session. Okay, our next question is from Adua. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Greetings. Thank you all for spending this time with us today. I really appreciate it. My question is, as a healer or even an empath, how do you protect yourself from the energy of others, especially during the session? Was that clear?
I missed the first part. I'm sorry.
Okay. As a healer or even an empath, how do you protect yourself from the energy of others, especially during a session?
So much. Again, I'm more in the somatic orientation, so I'm always looking at the mind, body, spirit triad. I say that to say every human enters into their spherical sort of realm through one of these entry points. For me, it's through spirit. For me, it's through prayer. It's through listening and speaking to the spirit in me first. Hello, Joëlle. Good morning. How are you? What do we need? What nourishment do we need? That starts that protection process. And then from that, it moves me into the body. What physical things do I need? How do I physically move? And then it works into the mind for me. What research can support all these things? So, and by doing that, that means a lot of different things. It could be, it's not just prayer. It's like, I might need to be spraying rose water, Florida water, need to burn some Palo Santo. That's the physical aspect. The mental aspect is understanding literally what I'm dealing with, so that I can know, oh, this person is just having this sort of episode, nothing to be afraid of, because I've already done that work. I don't have to over spiritualize it even. I can be with the research. I can be with the actuality that's been proven. And so there's so many different ways, but it's constant. It's before, it's after. It seems so simplified, but the idea of, when you're on a plane and they say, put the mask on yourself first before you put it on someone else, that is literally words to live by, literally. Like, I'm not gonna be good to anyone if I don't take care of me.
That's right.
Right. Thank you.
No problem.
To this, I will add the words of a 122-year-old man, Candice Burgess, who was a healer all his life. And he says that every time before he goes to deal with anybody's sickness, he does two things. He bathed with baking soda. That's a great purifier. Bathe with baking soda before going to the person. And when he gets there, he always call on the ancestors to do the first work and remove anything that can harm him before he will put his hand on the person.
Yep. Yep.
And by the way, baking soda, we all should have plenty of it at home and use it regularly to purify ourselves. We're in a society where there is so much out there, you know, and on top of it, it's good for the skin, make your skin smooth, and it fights body odor. So there's a lot of things.
Yes. Thank you.
We don't have any more hands raised, but I do have a question from a participant who had to leave early. Do I have permission to ask the question for her?
That's your session, sir. You do. You can give
Okay. This question is from Marjorie. The question is directed to both of you. And the question is, I know something is missing in my life and I want to change and move on, but I'm scared to do so. How can I step out and allow myself to do what is best for me? Thank you. That's her question.
I'll let you take that.
Okay. Well, it's the problem, the fundamental problem. Do you know who you are?
Bingo. Bingo.
That's number one question we all have to answer for ourselves. We have to answer it every morning.
Yep.
Okay? Bayyinah that was there last week is not the Bayyinah that's there now. Number of things happened, number of things changed. So I have to constantly be checking on Bayyinah, making sure I am in sync with the Bayyinah that's present now. So that's the number one thing. So we have to work on knowing ourselves. And as Joëlle just demonstrated, I would say it's regular hygiene. Taking 10 deep breaths every morning. It should be our regular hygiene. Before we touch the phone, before we turn on the television, before we say good morning to the person who slept with us last night, it's important to take your deep breath to bring yourself together with you. And I think once you get started that way, then you will find that it's easier for you to answer your questions. Because all the knowledge is in you. All of us are endowed. As she said a little earlier, from birth, we're born with all our qualities, all our potential, all the knowledge of the cosmos. That's who we are. We can't change that. School, church, all kinds of things interrupted our normal or derailed sometimes. But breathing in, trusting yourself, assuming who you are, will make it easy for you to grow. You will be the teacher and the student.
I believe that as well. It's something very interesting that I don't normally name this way, but I think it's okay these days, especially with the pandemic to the pandemonium that we're going through, all the protests, all the uprising, all the grief, you know. This question, obviously we don't have the person here to ask it, but the sentiment also, there's grief there, there's being lost, right? When we go through aspects of feeling lost or grief, it's a disorientation or a disconnection to what we knew as home or who we knew as home. And I feel like in this work, I'm meeting more and more people who are trying to be found, who are trying to find themselves, or trying to be connected again. Maybe not in the way that they used to be, or connected for the first time ever. For the first time ever. And I think because of the path that I'm choosing, not only to help teach and awaken or recall, help people recall, it's a part of the healing process. I truly believe I'm just a guide to help you heal yourself. You know, I don't think I'm healing you. I think I'm just helping you reconnect. And that's what it is. Even it's being demonstrated in our physical body, how we reconnect to who we are truly. And by who we are truly, it's classes that I teach where, you know, I ask people count, and every time it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I say try again, and it's 1, 2, and finally they say 0, right? What is your 0? What is and what is the association to 0 that you have? If you think 0 is a nothing, then the whole counting system means nothing. But if 0 is the foundation, is the original code, then everything means something. And so I try to get my students to understand, you are 0. You just happen to be called Joëlle. You just happen to be in a feminine body. You just happen to have black skin, right? Brown skin. That's the cloak, but the who you are, right? And that type of question comes from not knowing 0 and infiltrating, not understanding the code, not understanding the sequence. And I'm trying to get this at 7, I'm trying to get this at 8, I'm trying to get this at 9. But guess what? Until you know 0, life is it's gonna bring you right back down to 0 until you know who you are at 0, and that it's everything is there. And then when you know that everything is there, this type of questions won't come up much, if at all, because you're gonna understand, you're gonna build, you're gonna keep growing. And then you relate to your ancestors and your DNA and the cosmos in the infinite number that it is, holding both positive and negative, holding both masculine and feminine, everything. And you're a part of that. And so, but I still hold and I still regard the grief, because that is still a beautiful, and I tell people all the time, if you've never had your heart broken, you'll never know what it's like to be alive.
Yes, indeed.
Right? So even earlier you talked about how you said, when you ask people what's their pleasant memory, they mentioned the pain. Sometimes it is connected, right? And in the questioning, as our sister states, that's that moment where you can take the opportunity to push the life, push into understanding more of who you are. And I really hope that for them, and for anyone who's listening that needs to hear that. Where are you at 0? Where are you before you were given a name, before you were given a face, before you were given color and hair and all the things? Where were you? Who were you? And as you said earlier, children know.
Mm-hmm.
They only start getting indoctrinated around what, 5, 7, and then it starts to disconnect. And yeah.
Absolutely. This brought something else back to me. I remember getting a terrible spanking. I think I was maybe 7, because I said I would have 3 sons. And my mother said, "What do you know about having children?"
Oh.
And I spanked. But guess what? I have 3 sons.
You know. Yeah. Right.
We know.
We know.
All of the information is right there in us. It's the noise and everything else that gets us derailed sometimes.
Yeah.
Get us out of ourselves and make things, complicate things for us. What do you say? I have a question.
Oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am. I have a question. We've heard this twice, I think, already. Somebody talking about generational curse. What do you say about this?
I growing up, I definitely always heard that. It's not that there's a sentiment I don't understand. I understand the sentiment of it, do I believe, so let me phrase this. If there is a curse, do I believe that it stands and that it can't be undone? No, I don't subscribe to that. Personally, I don't. Because although I'm my mother's child, I'm not my mother.
For sure.
Right? So I'm not going to say that there were things that happened that may be attached to me or put me in the new popular word now, entangled. You know, I'm entangled in it in some way. But the more work I do to know who I am, the untangling I'm doing, because this has nothing to do with me. This is not my life purpose. This is not my being. And I think it's that type of hunger and fight that needs to be reintroduced as positive. Because particularly at this time, I will say in therapy sessions, what's coming up a lot is folks are more cognizant that they are in a fight for their life. Okay? And if we're basing a fight for our life, it's like, imagine a lion is coming to you, right? And they're on a hunt. They're not trying to play. They're not trying to hang out. They're not trying to cuddle. This is a fight for your life. Are you worried about your grandpapa's curse at the moment? That ain't got nothing to do with you. You're trying to live. And I think it's that type of moment where we have to distinguish. It's not that like, okay, your great-grandfather sold the family property and now the family is in debt. That type of untangling is real, but that comes when you are more settled, that you have to work that out and do the ritual and do the education, and right? But when you're in true fight, flight, free, all that, and so that's those curses, they can't even stand because you're going. And so in my opinion, I'm always a little conflicted with this term, because I do feel like, yes, our forefathers can put us in bad situations, but I also see that our forefathers, foremothers, all of our ancestors have given us also great tools to get us out. And it depends on your resilience. It depends on your fight. It depends on how much of this life you really want. And it's not to also shame people who don't have the fight, because there are also people who just don't. And I sit with those people too. They're just like, oh, I just want the magical wand and bippity boppity boo, fix it for me. And that's not how this works. So so when it comes to generational curses, I do believe that there's
I'm sorry, finish your sentence.
No, I think that there is some sentiment to it, but I don't believe it's completely binding.
The thing that shocked me most is that when someone tried to explain it to me and they said Black people have a generational curse. Yes. Of it that we've done and blah, 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 blah. I said, okay, fine. If we have a generational curse from having suffered slavery, colonization, and all the rest, what is it that they have on those who impose that on us? That's what I want.
Exactly. Well, look, what we see, okay, that's a great question. I will never forget being in a course and a white woman in my class, she was crying because she said, I envy people of color because of the hierarchy and spirituality that they have, and I want that too. And then she stopped herself and she says, but then I recognize my wanting what you have is a part of my colonizational aspect. I want to have what you have because I need to have everything. And I said, wow. But I appreciated that she was able to stop herself enough to recognize that pull. And so to her, a generational curse is, I don't have spirituality. And you guys have the hierarchy there. I said, but yeah, we may have the hierarchy there to you, but that's because you took everything from us. So all we had was our gods and our spirit and our Buddha. You know what I'm saying? It's like that's all we had. So we had to grow in that because you took everything away. So we want to look at it from generational curses on both sides. It's like, well, we're maximizing on one way while you tried to maximize in another way. And eventually, in my opinion, it's all about to get evened out, right? We have rhythm out the womb, pretty much. We are mass creators. Just the other day, I was realizing how many inventions we've made just within the last 100 years. Of course, we don't get as much credit, of course, but you can't even stop us from creating. You try to stop us in other ways. So to me, there's a disconnect with, if generational curses is the bind, then how are we still able to have hierarchy in other realms and still create? So there's a disconnect. It's not to say that there isn't some default, you know.
Do we have other questions?
We have one last question. And Dr. Yap, please unmute to ask the question.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Alafia, greeting, Orne. I am so happy to be on. I came on late. And my question, I did type it into the chat room. I came in at the end of when you were talking about the male and female energy that exists in us. And I agree. And I wanted for you to help me. How do you nurture this? Because we live in such a patriarchal society, and nurture it so that it's not sexualized. Because we live in a society that, as you said, by the time you're 5, you know, you're already been indoctrinated into your role, into your gender, and all of that. And I find it to be something I am at the point where I want to reconcile with. Joëlle.
Okay, so I was just having this conversation yesterday, similar conversation, with the understanding around now. So intersectionality is a key understanding. Speaking of hierarchy, I particularly believe that the first being, which is the Black woman, has the most intersectional aspects available. And I think that causes huge problems within a toxic patriarchal society. And so we're also looking at conversations around, because what you're saying with masculine and feminine, and it's not just opposing, it's not just a scale, it's a spectrum, right? Because we have other folks in there, we have other beings in there, but it's not to say that it's an oppositional aspect. If we're looking at it more like a palindrome, like it's always going back and forth, it's always fluid, the palindrome eventually becomes a circle. But all of these concepts had to be disregarded at one point in order for the current structures to stay alive and be dominant. And when it comes into spirituality, right, we see in all, I mean, whether Haiti and far back, the gods were the spectrum. They weren't just one, just the other. They were this spectrum. And so when we're looking at universal aspects, and you take it even farther, if you're into earth magic or earth energy, you look at the plants, there's still this spectrum on how to be in community, how to be constantly working with each other. And I feel that that's important to start to reintegrate into the conversation. So it's not to say I've never met men or women who have very, very little of the other in their sort of being, but most people are constantly aware that they have a strength that's coming from not just, maybe from an ancestor, maybe from DNA in that regard, maybe from a spirit that is more masculine, that's giving them the energy to do this or say this or be forward. And then there's another one that's working for the nourishment as the feminine energy, and also channeling, not channeling as in like a TV channel, but bringing down messages, recalling, remembering. I love looking at cultures like India, where their biggest sages are men, but if you're looking at them, they're operating in mostly feminine energy, but they're physically a masculine form. But then you come to the Western world, it's only, all that is for women. And men can't be readers or understanding the stars or listening to spirit. And you see what I'm saying? So it's a conversation that I think, again, is becoming more founding, because we're seeing how folks are showing up in their true selves, and how that's rocking the boat. It's rocking the boat of whatever the toxic, because I don't think patriarchy is bad, but there's a toxic patriarchy that's happening.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who participated. Thank you to all those who sent all the messages in the chat room. Thank you to those who had questions and didn't get a chance to, but you do have an email that you could send your questions to if you're truly looking for an answer. And we don't say the answer, an answer, because the answer will only come from you.
Yes.
Okay, all of us can contribute with an answer. When you have a true question, the answer comes from you. You the teacher, you the student, you the general, you the soldier. That's how it works. And getting back in touch with our inner self, getting back into that depth where we know we can have a conversation. Bayyinah sits down with Bayyinah and said, well, Bayyinah, you know what you did yesterday here, that's not the way. It's not in accord with the principles of established principles of how we are to live. You need to correct that. You need to rectify. You need to go back to Joëlle and excuse yourself. You need to make reparation. Okay? Reparation is not just about mass this or that. On a daily basis, if we know we have harmed someone, we are duty bound to reparation. And you know what? When I do reparation to Joëlle towards what I did that wasn't proper, you know who was the first beneficiary? Bayyinah. That's the thing about it. Once I can go back, apologize, make amend, right? And this is not from yesterday, and this is not from the Quran or the Bible or anything. Actually, I became aware of that by reading Sundiata Keita's text of 1221. It clearly says, reparation, whenever you have harm, be careful. Do not do harm to your neighbor. Do not do harm to, and when you do, reparation is a must. That is the law of our land on the Empire of Mali from way back then. So, whatever the situation, we have to go back to our ancestors' words. We have to remember. And you know, that's what it does. Once you have the words of the elders, then it makes you remember what you're supposed to do and how to be in harmony with yourself. Once you're in harmony with yourself, it's easy to get along with Joëlle. It's easy to get along with Kwesi. It's easy to get along with Ya. Does that mean we'll never say to each other, no, I'm not? Yes, we will. But after we say that, then we'll say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have spoken like that. That wasn't necessary. And then we'll go on about the mission. Yeah, that's the way it is. So please, let's be real. But step one, know yourself. In the name of all those who fought so we could be on this earth, so we would not disappear, all those who gave their lives and their blood, the Dessalines, the clearer words, we greet you, we tell you, go in peace, but be armed with truth, believe in self, and the determination to be victorious, to add your victory to their victories that you received.
Ashe. Thank you, merci. Merci un peu.
Aïe, Bobo, Ashe.
Aïe, Bobo.
Merci, merci. Take good care. Be the best you can ever be. Continue to grow in health, wealth, and power.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Miss Dussek,
Yes.
how can everyone get in contact with you? Do you have a website or email or some information you want to?
Yes, I do. It is Flow, FLOWNIN, the THE, light, LIGHT.com. So www.flowinthelight.com. Hit me up. We definitely can talk. We can I do also readings if people need readings done for like sort of therapeutic readings, and have a channel. We're also going to get more information out, more interviews, and help people just sort of understand how to get back to their zero and be in their light.
Thank you. And before we end, I want to give a word from our sponsor. I don't know if everyone can see that. Can everyone see Thoroughbred Books?
Mm-hmm.
Be sure to show support for our sponsor, Thoroughbred Books. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. You can unmute yourself and say goodbye to Ms. Bello.
All right. All right. This was wonderful. So, and yeah, so nourishing. It was very nourishing for me. Thank you all, and goodbye. Have a great afternoon, great evening, and goodbye, South Africa.
Merci, everyone.
Yes.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Joëlle.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Joëlle.
Thank you,
Bayyinah,
Mama
Bello.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Much
Brother
appreciated.
Kwesi.
Thank you, Brother Kwesi.
And of course, France, you're the man.
Brother Kwesi. Brother.
Kwesi Dessalines.
Kwesi's trying to take my job.
No.
It's okay. We gotta pass the baton.
Brother, thank you for stepping in. I appreciate you. All right, everybody. We see you next
All right, friends.
Joëlle, that was amazing. What I caught of it, that was amazing. You're very dope. Continue all the great stuff that you're doing. And my Bello, we'll talk soon.
All right. Take good care. Thank
you.
you.
Yep.
That's what solidarity does. One brother has something to do, another brother steps in.
Yes.
Amen.
Healing.
Community.
Yes.
Thank you, Bayyinah.
Thank you so much, Bayyinah. That was powerful.
Ashe.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Joëlle. Thank you, Mama Bello.
You're welcome, welcome, welcome. Ayi bobo.
Ayi bobo.
Ayi bobo.